So I originally came down to Playa del Carmen in 2021, I believe, to get some dental work as a result of an accident. The cost was much, much cheaper than in Virginia. So I came down here originally for 7 days and fell in love with the beach and the people and the language. I was fluent in Spanish, so that made the transition very easy. And I started looking into condos, and the cost of living was unbeatable. So I moved down here permanently. I believe it was January 2023, actually, after the passing of my father.
Hey, Gen Max, you just met Chad and heard a little bit of his story, but we're going to hear about his story about the condos that he owns here in Playa del Carmen, rents one of them out, lives in the other one. We're going to hear all about his story of how he made it to Playa del Carmen, why he made it to Playa del Carmen, how he learned Spanish, things like that. So let's go ahead and go back a few years in Chad's life and hear the story of just before he made his way to Mexico.
Unfortunately, in 2010, my family was notified that my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It was in her liver and colon. And at the time, they didn't give her much time to live, but through chemo and radiation, she actually lasted 7 years. She passed away in 2017 on July 13th, which also happens to be my birthday. Fast forward about 2 years, and my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer as well. His was in the colon. He also had some heart issues, so surgery was not an option. My father passed away in April of 2022, I believe. My siblings and I had made the decision to sell my parents' house, so I said, I'm going to pick up and move down to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I had been here briefly back in 2014 for just the day. I was actually in Cancun for a week and made a day trip down here. So we spent about 6 months fixing my dad's house up, put it on the market on a Friday, and it sold 2 days later. So I packed my stuff up with the help of my best friend. We emptied out the house, had an estate sale, and I hopped on a plane and came down to Mexico, to Playa del Carmen. I had been looking for houses online back home, but seeing them in person is much, much different. So I got in contact with a real estate agent who was originally from Minnesota, but lives here in Playa, has been here for about 20 years. So him and I went on the house tour. I looked at probably 30 or 40 condos until I found this place. My goal was to buy 2 and live in one and rent out one. Thankfully, with the help of my parents, I had the financial resources to do that. So back in April of 2023, I purchased this condo and the one above, which is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and started renting that place out. And I live down here in the 1-bedroom and 1-bath. And I just passed 2 years here in Playa. I love it. Still getting used to the humidity in the summers. That's a little brutal. I just received an offer to work for a company manufacturing circuit boards that is headquartered in Hong Kong, China, actually. So I am lucky enough to work from home. I get to sit by the pool or sit by the beach, and as long as I have my phone and my laptop.
So we are going to talk about the places here. We can tour this one, but the ladies are living in the other one. But we're going to take a tour of this one, hear how much he paid for both of these, and also talk about what he's doing for work, exactly how that's working out. So let's start out with the tour. Let's hear about this place.
So this is Condominium Maxi. This is the development where I bought my condos. There are 18 condos here. We have studios, 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, and then up top we have penthouses, which are 3 bedrooms. They have their own private terrace and jacuzzis, but those were a little bit out of my price range. So we have gated entry. One of the things that attracted me, we have gated entry, we have 24-hour security, we have underground parking. Most people park out front. We have a common area with a pool. All the neighbors are awesome. And so the price was perfect. For both condos, I paid approximately 120,000 US dollars. It was about 65 and 55, 70 and 50. And I put in probably about $7,500 to $10,000 completely renovating them. I took out the kitchens, added a window, hid cables up in the concrete, painted, changed the bathrooms, the cabinets, the master closet. Back in Virginia, you couldn't get a studio for that price. So I've been here 2 years now. I got some tenants. I had some tenants living in the 1-bedroom for a while from Argentina. They were 2 boys. They were tattoo artists. They went back to Argentina, and then I moved my stuff down to the 1-bedroom and rented out the 2-bedroom to capitalize on my investment. So I found 2 girls from Argentina. One of them works at a law firm, and the other one works as a waitress, and they've been here for 3 months now, and they're great. They have a little dog. They always pay on time. I live right next door if there's any problems, so that part I would probably change because they have easy access to me and I'm not very handy. So
yes, Kat and I became landlords for the first time this past year or two, and luckily the tenant, we own a property next door, but we're not always there, and I'm never there actually. So it actually works out pretty well. She always pays on time. she's kind of the dream tenant. But let's hear a little bit more specifically about this unit, because we can walk around and see it.
Okay, so this is the one bedroom, one bath condo that I bought in Condominium Maxi, condo number 103. It's about 65 square meters. It came furnished. Furnishings were a little outdated and not really to my liking, so I knew going in that I was gonna renovate it. I got a king size bed that was like the only big purchase that I really made down here. I got a little kitchenette. I don't do much cooking. I'm by myself, and I'm not very handy in the kitchen, so I did go out and upgrade the refrigerator because within the first week, I think my fridge door fell off, so made a trip over to Tela Bodega, and I found an open box one that was priced very well. So I got a one bath. The furnishings, most of the stuff that the house came furnished with, I donated or sold. It was a little outdated and not quite to my liking, but I love it here. I got some neighbors out back who like to fiesta quite a bit, so the noise sometimes on the weekends at 7 a.m. can be a little disturbing, but I love all my neighbors. I don't have a vehicle down here. I have a mountain bike and I can get to the beach in 10 minutes. That's one of the things I like about Playa is that it's all accessible, by walking if you want, but there's public transportation 2 blocks away. I have grocery stores, barber shops, laundromats. So I decided, I looked on the beach side of the highway, but coming down here, I wanted to live like a local. So I decided to come across the highway, and you get a lot more bang for your buck. Several of the things that attracted me about Condominium Maxi is there's a elementary school right across the street. There's a church 2 blocks away. And as I mentioned, the location, public transit's right there. And it's been very humbling. A lot of people that come down live over on 5th Avenue or that side of the highway. And to me, it seemed like just moving down to North Carolina or Florida, because the majority of the people over there are American or Canadian or German. And I wanted to really immerse myself with the Mexican culture. And by coming over here to Hilo, I've definitely done that.
So yeah, the place that I am staying at is right in the middle of kind of everything on 10th or something. 5th is the walkable street and 10th is the next street with lots of bars and restaurants. And it's kind of the party zone, I guess, in Playa del Carmen. So let's ask Chad, what it's like living here versus being a tourist here, which is probably pretty common. It seems like walking around, it seems like a lot of the folks who are out on the street are probably here for a short time period. They're drinking an awful lot, and then their liver's going to recover for the rest of the year after their 1 week of vacation. So let's see what it's like living here 365 days a year.
Living here in Playa del Carmen as opposed to visiting is completely different. You become humble very, very quickly. They have there's a saying that they have called the gringo tax, which I experienced when I first got down here. You get in a cab and the price is double. Going into it, I knew what I was supposed to pay, but they would see my face or my skin color, I guess, and I would be speaking in English initially, and they double the price on me, and then I started speaking in Spanish, and they said, oh wow, oh, you live here? And I said, yeah, I'm a temporary resident. So when I first came down here to get some dental work done, I was only here for a week and then 10 days, and I was over on 5th Avenue, staying in an Airbnb right around the corner from the dental office, and it was just party central, surrounded by bars, rooftop bars, music going on till 5, 6 in the morning. And I knew that I didn't want to do that if I was going to be here, long term. So I found this neighborhood over here. It's quiet, it's peaceful. All the neighbors are very, very cool.
So quick interruption. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, be sure to click the subscribe button and the little bell icon to get notified of future videos. And if you already have subscribed, leave a comment down below and let me know how you think we're doing on this video. Let's get back to the interview. So let's talk about what you do all day, but I guess you're working now. So let's also talk about what you do, not only on the weekends, but also during the week for work.
So when I first got down here to Playa del Carmen, I didn't have a job and I wasn't really looking for a job. I was going to the beach multiple times a week, hanging out with my friends, going to cenotes. I've taken day trips down to Tulum, going swimming in the cenotes. There's always something going on down on 5th Avenue. It's beach volleyball, soccer, expat meetups, just constantly party. I quickly realized that, I'm getting a little up in age and that's not really why I moved down here. So once I got some tenants in my condo, I actually started looking for jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed, working remote and specifically looking for bilingual because I'm fluent in Spanish. Several months ago, I applied. I had a job temporarily with a volunteerism company. So when groups from churches or universities or corporations would go to countries that needed help or cities that needed help, this company would coordinate the logistics, the flights and the hotels. That didn't work out. It wasn't really had nothing to do with my background. So I started looking again, and I just recently, last week, was offered a position as the Pan American account executive for a circuit board manufacturer based out of Hong Kong. So I signed the offer letter. My training officially starts next week, and I'm going to be responsible for sales in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So that occupies my time nowadays. Most of my friends down here work, full-time jobs. They don't get off till 10, so there's not a ton of people to hang out with. There is, but not the kind of people that I'm looking to hang out with.
So I think Chad already mentioned that he speaks Spanish. But let's check in on that, and also let's figure out what was the biggest surprise moving to Mexico.
I am bilingual, which was one of the factors in me moving down to Mexico. Back in Virginia, in middle school, you have to take a class called Introduction to Foreign Language. And it was Latin, French, German, and Spanish. And then in ninth grade, you had to designate one. And I didn't do very well at the other three, but Spanish seemed to come pretty easy for me. So I started taking Spanish my freshman year. By the time I graduated, I was in Spanish 5 advanced placement. It didn't really teach you a whole lot of conversational Spanish. I actually picked it up because in the summers when I would come home from college, I worked for a landscaping company in Northern Virginia. And for the most part, I was the only English speaking person there. So in order for me to communicate, and I had my driver's license, so by default, I was the foreman. So in order for me to communicate with my team, and who may have been from Mexico, Honduras, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, I had to speak Spanish every single day for, 2 or 3 summers. And that's how I picked it up, pretty much. I think one of the biggest shocks to me when I came down here, because previously my experience had been on the beach side of the highway. And when I purchased my condos on the local side of the highway, just the amount of the trash, people throw it in the road. There's an empty lot 2 blocks down, and there's cars, mattresses, tables. There's not really, to my knowledge, like a public dump, or if there is, they don't use it very much. They kind of throw stuff around. That's one of the big things I would change. And the amount of dogs down here is unbelievable. In my condo building, I'd say probably about 70% of people own a dog, but you step outside and on any given night, you could see 20 to 30 running around. And that was a big shock to me as well. Not many people here pick up after their pets. So you have to be very careful where you walk. Another crazy thing to me was the architecture, the construction. You'll notice if you walk around town, it seems like they kind of just built sidewalks around trees or over trees. So in many instances, you'll see trees coming up out of the concrete, and that's just how they do it. Right around the block from me, we get a lot of rain, and it destroys the roads. So there's these huge potholes. And there was one around the corner from me for weeks and weeks, and I walked around there the other day, and somebody had put tires in it, just empty tires to just kind of fill the holes. The construction, I don't know if you can call it that, but over where I live in Ejido, it's not uncommon to see neighbors' homes made out of plastic, pieces of scrap, wood, plastic bottles. There's a house around the corner that looks like they took 1,000 glass bottles and turned them on their sides and just cemented them in, and that's their wall down here. So that was a huge shock for me when I came down here coming from Virginia.
Yeah, these are some of the things that shocked us too. When you're coming to Mexico as a tourist, you are getting often, like if we're just down at Fifth Avenue, which is not that far from here, maybe a 15-minute walk or so, it's very clean. It's a little bit cleansed, I guess. And a lot of Mexico is, when you get into Mexican neighborhoods, you get into more less well-off areas, there is more garbage. Street dogs can be a problem. I know a lot of foreigners get involved in sterilization campaigns and things like that. So, or adopting dogs. We are currently having 2 adopted dogs, and we have 1 foster going on right now. So yeah, I think a lot of people might be, I don't know if the word is shocked, surprised at how things work in Mexico, or maybe don't work quite as well as you expected if you've only been hanging out in the tourist areas. If you've really traveled a lot into the more local areas, you start to get used to it really pretty quickly. And then like the glass wall it starts to be kind of a special type of architecture almost. So it's a cultural thing that you can start to appreciate after a bit. I don't know. I also see like spare tires thrown into potholes, or the top of a manhole cover is missing. Someone will throw a spare tire in there so you don't fall in. So yeah, it's just a different way. Things are prioritized differently, and so it's good to kind of set your expectations differently from the tourist areas to the more local areas. But let's get a tip for anyone who's maybe in their late 40s, early 50s, someone who's thinking about moving to Mexico. Let's see what Chad has to say for some advice for them.
One of the biggest things that I'm grateful for is I knew a buddy back in Virginia who referred me to a gentleman in Isla Mujeres who's a real estate agent. Unfortunately, scams are a huge thing down here, primarily when it comes to real estate. So luckily, my buddy put me in contact with a law firm here called Next Law, so that everything was going to be legit with the purchase of my condo. And I strongly recommend that. When I first came down here and started looking at places, you did not have to be licensed in order to be a real estate agent. So anybody and their mother could and would try to sell you a condo, because they would get commission on it. So the biggest thing that I can recommend is do your research. I did a ton of research back in Virginia about, getting my residency. What does it take to buy a house? Can I legally buy a house? Is it in my name? Am I ever gonna officially own it? And so thankfully I did. However, I purchased it about 2 years ago and I just now got the deed for this one place. So one of the saying down here is, you're on Mexican time. And that could be a day, a week, a month, or in my case, a year and a half. There's no really sense of urgency down here, so don't expect anything to happen quickly. I just now got my electric bill changed in my name officially. It was in the previous owner's name, and that took about a year. It took me several months just to get an appointment. And then I went to my appointment. It turned out I didn't have all the documents. So I joined a group on Facebook down here called Expats in Playa del Carmen. And anytime I have any kind of question, there's a wealth of knowledge. Also, my neighbor, he has helped me get my license, and I'm currently, I think, in the process of getting my driver's license. So he's been helping me out with that. My lease agreement was actually written by a good friend of my sister-in-law. So find people you can trust. It's very hard to find people you can trust. Watch out for scams. It happens, unfortunately, all the time. A neighbor of mine actually put a deposit down on 2 condos over on Fifth Avenue, and the builder just up and left. So he's out several $100,000. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a whole lot he can do about it. So
yeah, this is something that I've heard of other people talking about is the pre-construction condo, which they can be really, really good deals. Essentially, you're giving the money up front so that the contractor can build out the building, and then by the time it finishes, you're often already $100,000 ahead or something like that compared to the units that are being sold at that point. However, I think I talked about this in the video about Cabo, real estate in Cabo, San Lucas. And the key thing here is to make sure that you're working with a real estate agent, that you have someone representing you, a licensed real estate agent who is with a trustworthy firm, and they're willing to essentially vouch for the builder, especially also looking at who is the real estate company that's working with the builder. So if there is a legitimate real estate company that's been around for decades, and they're saying, yeah, we trust this builder, we trust this enough to put our name on it, that can help you make sure that the building is gonna get complete and you don't end up out tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So be smart, I think, is the key thing here when you're in Mexico or when you're thinking about moving to Mexico. But definitely do it. So there are more folks here in Playa del Carmen that I have been interviewing while I'm down here. So you're gonna find those folks up here, and other folks, I think maybe I'll send you the video about Cabo down here where you can check out the idea of pre-construction. So from Playa del Carmen, wish you were here. Hasta luego.